the quiet town of Sheffield, Massachusetts, nestled within the picturesque Berkshire Hills, an extraordinary event unfolded on September 1st, 1969. It was a night that would forever alter the lives of one family and ignite the curiosity of the world. The Reed family, led by Thom Reed, experienced what would become one of the most compelling UFO encounters in history. Thom, then a young boy, along with his mother, grandmother, brother, encountered a massive diamond shaped object hovering above the highway as they drove through the Berkshires. Thom Reed has been quoted as saying, quote, "It was unlikely anything we'd ever seen before. The craft emitted blinding light, and suddenly we found ourselves surrounded by a surreal silence." The Berkshire UFO incident captured the imagination of the nation and drew scrutiny from military and scientific organizations. Yet, despite official investigations, many questions still remain unanswered. The Berkshire UFO incident, a story of wonder, intrigue, and the enduring search for truth in the unknown. And tonight on the Nikki Starchild Show, we're going to bring you Thom Reed, and we're going to be breaking down everything that was going on right here tonight. So stick with us right now. Of the Nikki Starchild Show, introducing the new unrated TV by UFO Expo with Thom Reed and Gentry Anderson. Thom Reed is a mastermind behind UFO Expo. He's no stranger to the paranormal. His family's encounter, known as Thom Reed's Berkshire UFO incident, is etched in history. Gentry Anderson is a ufologist, experiencer, and an acquired musical savant. She has been on panels for Blind Frog Ranch and excavated with Don Schmidt and Roswell. So buckle up for a journey into the unknown with Unrated TV by UFO Expo leading the way, prepared to explore the mysteries of the universe in this stellar episode of the Nikki Starchild Show. And without further ado, here we have the wonderful Thom Reed and the most amazing Gentry. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. And what an intro. We need to hire you. For our show. Anyway, thanks, Nikki. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Thom.
Thanks for having us on.
Oh, I was just so excited you guys are starting this new endeavor with UFO Expo, that you guys have unrated TV, Gentry, to hear that you've excavated with Don Schmidt and Roswell. We were talking about meditation and a couple other awesome things. I just know we're just have a really special evening planned tonight as we discuss all the things UFOs. But to get started, I just want to ask, I guess I'll start with Thom, because you kind of, you and Gentry have come together and created this amazing new platform that you're working with. And how did this idea come about? What inspired it?
Well, I had been holding smaller conferences in my area, and we came to find out that a lot of these other cities or communities or what have you were trying to hold these UFO events, but they weren't able to get the guests. They weren't able to get the good names. They weren't able to really get it off the ground. And so, I went and helped a couple of them locally. And then, we had one in Florida, St. Augustine. And then all of a sudden I get a call from Roswell. And because of the, there was a time a few years ago where, the flights were held up and the tourists weren't really traveling. And so the town itself was kind of going through a little bit of a dilemma with these shops struggling to, stay open, a lot of the novelty shops and that kind of thing. And so I met with the city attorney and the head of marketing and that kind of thing. And they asked me if I would move my event from Florida to Roswell. And in turn, the city offered me $18,000 to do it. And so we incorporated that into the marketing of it. And of course, it was more than enough to get things moving. And then we had the convention center. And so I met you there. You were there. If I'm not mistaken, that was the UFO Expo event. And so then I worked with the museum and a lot of the players there, and so it was a success. There was a lot of people in town, and although the convention center was big, right? So when you got 500-600 people, it didn't look like a whole lot when you really think about it, but it did well, and it helped the town out immensely. You saw those people downtown, and so now we're working on one in Miami, and we're working on another in North Carolina, and so with UFO Expo, having these guests and that kind of thing, we thought, well, why don't we just start filming while we're out there too, and capturing the events and behind the scenes and that kind of thing. And so I'm like, well, I need a partner, and I've known Gentry forever. She's super cool, and I'm like, I couldn't have a better co-host. So I'm grateful she's hanging in there with me, because I can be a pain in the ass, and so we right now we got this talk show thing going on, and here's a really cool thing about it. So when we were talking, we're like, we don't want to be like everyone else, right? We don't want to be just going over the same old interviews, right? We want to bring something fresh, do something different, go to the next level. And so because UFO Expo was written up in all these mainstream newspapers, and to include the Roswell Daily Record, the front page, and the Inside Edition, and the Associated Press, and all this, I was actually able to take our talk show, if you will, or podcast, glorified podcast, and actually get it listed on IMDb as a bona fide talk show. So anyone who comes on our show will also get an IMDb credit, just as if you went on CNN or Fox. And so that's different. And so we're also cramming like twice the juice, and half the time. We're trying to compress everything into a half an hour, because a lot of people don't have time for an hour podcast. And so we're pre-recording, right? And we're taking the best 30 minutes of the 60 minutes and compiling it and just making it fast paced. And it's going well. Like we've got, I'm speaking with Meghan McCain, from The View, and the daughter of, Senator John McCain. And I've got Jimmy Bell from the band Autograph, who also was playing with Ozzy. He auditioned with Ozzy with Zakk Wylde, and did a movie with Michael J. Fox. And so he's the lead guitar player, like I said, for Autograph, and he's touring right now. And so he's coming on. So we've got some killer guests, and it's all falling into place. It's good energy, and so I'm really excited about that. I'm glad
I love
Gentry
it.
put up with me.
I love it. So Gentry enters. Tell us about when this magical new project with Thom. How did this start? What's this looking like? Because we got Thom. He's telling us what's going on. You came in. What happened next? Oh, you're on mute.
Blah, blah, blah. Hi. So Thom and I started this conversation several months ago, and I had been thinking about getting back into the podcast world, either starting my own or partnering up with someone. And when he originally asked me, it was like, yes, absolutely. So it's just been a lot of talk until I would say a few weeks. I would say a few weeks into the new year or so, right, Thom?
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago, we decided to really, put it out there, and we've accomplished a lot in that short amount of time.
Yeah. Anyway, so we just really, when he let me know about the IMDb credit situation, it was like, wait, we can now have the flexibility to kind of take this into a different direction. And my whole thought process on it was, also not in addition to having, celebrities, but in conjunction with having experiencers and non-experiencers on the show, but really getting to the heart of like, how aware are we of the fact that we're in this together, so getting different perspectives and trying to really evaluate where we're at as a race in terms of harmony and ascension and those things that are an everyday existential crisis to me. And just trying to ask really honest questions and hopefully get honest answers. And I don't have time to be messing around with all of the fluff and the secrets. It's just not okay with me anymore. I mean, trying to set the stage for living in a world where telepathy is real.
I believe that. I believe that. That's very great. Live in a world where telepathy's real. I love that. That's beautiful.
Should coin that.
Now that we're
I
moving
thought about it.
into kind of what's coming up next, do you think this is a good time for me to show the clip?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can I segue that in?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So, again, and where Gentry's going too is that, we're all part of a bigger picture, right? And just because, maybe you're a celebrity, a musician or whatever, they need a platform too, where they feel comfortable to say a few words. And that's kind of where we're going. And so we're also working on this film, Thom Reed's Berkshire's UFO, which is going to be the untold, which we're going to get into this show. I don't want to spoil that, but yeah, there's a lot of things that never get mentioned. And so we were filming and we're like, we need some more footage. And so I reached out to Skylar, who works for the, he's actually a cinematographer and works for the Food Network. And he was in Roswell about 3 or 4 years ago, filming something for himself, which had to do with the topic of ufology and the crash in Roswell and that kind of thing. But he never got the footage, never went anywhere. He still has it. And so I reached out to him, like, what did you do with that footage? He's like, you can have it. And so we had him, on our show, Gentry and I, and where he agrees to turn over like hours on hours of footage about ufology and Roswell and the interviews that he did at the museum and so on and so forth with Travis and us going into the parade with the limo. So it's really kind of cool. So yeah, I'd love you to show it. It's kind of cool.
Fantastic. Well, this is the clip. Am I correct? This is the clip. Correct. Fantastic.
Yeah, but it's not the beginning. Yeah.
Are you, how did you even get interested in this?
I feel like for me, it just kind of feels like, there's some sort of interaction, even just like delving into this phenomenon, like it kind of like touches you or like infects you in some sort of way.
If we were to go current,
yeah,
we're in Roswell.
I kind of see like the government trying to hijack the way this story goes. Kind of like how we were editing the Roswell doc was like, it not like, okay, Thom Reed segment, like Travis Walton segment, almost like you guys were like the narrators of it, right?
Right.
And so like these big segments of it, but like it would cut back in, cut out. For this documentary, it's like I think I interviewed everybody for like an hour, 2 hours. Like there's no way we'd use that's like
that's a
like
lot
I feel
of
like 15 minutes, maybe like for the most, you know what I'm saying? Like like the craziest stuff. And like even then, I think it'd be edited pretty differently. You know what I'm saying? So it wouldn't be a straight 15 minutes. It'd probably be like 5 minutes of voiceover, something else, go back. But I should have at least like, I think I could like, I mean, it depends on how much more, like I definitely have a lot of B-roll for you in regards to footage of yourself. I should have at least like, probably at least like an hour straight on interview because we interviewed in the Roswell and then we interviewed at the hotel. Along well with the limo. So I think there should be like an hour of footage there. I like my interview with Travis. It was cool. It's just like over coffee and this little like kind of like diner thing. It was pretty
yeah,
cool.
You were in the hotel. In the hotel.
Yeah, that could be good to just juxtapose like another like, you know what I'm saying, like this and that.
All right. So that was the interview with you and Gentry talking about this amazing footage that he took and how he's kind of been following you guys around.
Yeah, which is remarkable because it's how do you, it would take forever to get what he got, to have an entire team of photographers and cinematographers around interviewing everybody at Roswell. I mean, it's fantastic. And so I think he's doing something as well. So I'm sure there's going to be some footage that is going to be kept back for him, personally. But for the most part, my God. And then, so this is the other thing. So then Gentry is going to go to Roswell with us in July, and Skylar is going to be there with his team. And whatever we still need, they're going to work with us to get that footage. They're going to be actually the cinematographers for us. And at that point, that will seal whatever is still lacking for this documentary. And it's going to be, my God, if powerful. I mean, I can get into what it's going to include, but it's going to be really significant. It's really going to take people to a spot they never thought this case existed, and I think that's why I still talk about it, because there's so many things that just get turned around and made light of, like the death of my father and how it went to the United Nations, and the beatings we took by certain police officers, and how our diner played a role and had ties to the space race, and how the Roswell Research Library played a role in our case getting inducted because they were able to mine for information, and the lawyers were at the at the museum itself, the research library, the section of it there. And then that footage was turned over to attorneys in in Tennessee, actually, and then they were sent to Massachusetts, because they couldn't use just any letter that looked like it was legit. It had to go through a court system, and then it had to be sealed by a magistrate. And then once it was sealed, then they could use that particular letter in place of an original. So whenever you're going to a state or a court, you can't just use a copy. They need it. It has to be authenticated. And so that's the role they played. And the Roswell Daily newspaper interviewed, the historian who was working with us to get this inducted. And so Roswell has ties and connections and played a very important role in our case being inducted into history, and why they back or support or are benefactors of our UFO park in Massachusetts.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's the thing about the UFO park is, and the incident that you experienced was recognized by the government as a historical site. Is that correct?
It's not recognized. It's actually officially archived into state. Well, I sit next to Paul Revere in the Boston Tea Party. The first recognized was probably Betty and Barney Hill, and of course.
Well, I don't mean, I mean recognized in regards that the government said this is part of history.
Yeah,
they confirmed that. Like, maybe the word I'm using is not correct, but like Betty and Barney Hill wasn't confirmed. There's a lot more documentation associated with your experience that shows it was confirmed. Does that
right?
see what I'm
That's
saying?
pretty much it. So it does have a place in history, and it's funny how even if I go on News Nation, they'll say, Thom's alleged. If it's inducted into history, it's no longer alleged. That's like saying Paul Revere's alleged ride. They still can't get past that. They're so used to throwing mud at it, I guess, that even though it's inducted, into history, it's still a claim on my part or whatever. I'm not the one claiming it. The state did, that kind of thing. So we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. And I urge all the viewers to go and really deep dive on the case and how it's been acknowledged by the government, and how it's part of one of the few events that I feel like it's just so important on a documented regard, because it's part of America's history, and you've unearthed part of America's history that has been so attempted to be withheld, right? Like, you are putting out there the history that they don't want to have out there. And so that I just applaud you completely. And I think what you've been able to do is similar to what other people who are doing the documents and trying to, like, you did it with your event. And if we could, like, you're like, this is my event and you found all the documents. It's impressive. It is.
The event, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I urge everybody to go deep dive into it. And I'll put all the links to all the stuff you've sent me into this video.
Cool. I appreciate it. Yeah. So just to recap it. So yeah, we've gone through a lot, and I think one of the things that has really helped us, if I could just touch on this one more time, that the radio station that broadcast us back in 1969 is still there in the same building, in the same, the wife of Tom J, who actually broadcast us back in 1969, she still lives in town, and our diner, which proved to be instrumental in getting us inducted, is still there. It's a pizza house now. And of course, you had Sprague Electric that made the goodwill message that was left on the moon. The people that worked on that, and the workers from Sprague that eat in our diner, they knew my parents, just as GE and Command Aerospace, and Pratt and Whitney wasn't too far away, and of course NASA was in Boston. So you had all these people were coming in and eating at our diner because we're down the road from the racetrack, the horse track, and so that was the best place to eat and then go to the track. And so our diner had the jukebox, listen to music. My mom would deep fry French fries and bacon fat. They were pretty good actually, and and so it had ties to the space race. And those kids who are now judges and lawyers and historians, were all part of it. So in some respects, there's this group that I knew it was true. I remember I was part of that. I remember it. And I'll be damned if someone's going to tell us it wasn't true. So we had to do all this research. You get these documents and papers, and had to take my polygraph test and everything, which is no big deal. But at the same time, it was a lot of work. And of course, and something that doesn't get mentioned enough is that in the late 80s, you had the Hudson River Valley sightings. And so we were contacted by an attorney, Robert Bletchman, who at the time was the public relations director for MUFON. And he lived in Manchester, Connecticut. And Don Schmidt knew him really well. And so with that, he was working with Mohammed Ramadan, who was the president of the Parapsychology Society at the United Nations. And there was a team that was put together that included Stanton Friedman, Linda Morton Howe, Bletchman, my father's friend and attorney, and they wanted to dig up what they could to add support to what possibly could be happening in the Hudson River Valley area. And so because our case was over the Housatonic River and followed the waterway, and there were government manufacturing facilities working on the space race in our backyard, and my father being an attorney and a politician, that it added credence, or there was a pillar type of standing that could support what was happening here. So could that have carried over to the Hudson? And so my father gave me a check for $500, and I dropped it off in Bletchman's office to represent us legally, contractual agreement, if you will. And then, our case went in support of the Hudson River Valley sightings and Cash and Landerman, actually, because of the way the wildlife was affected around our vehicle. And my father was actually killed on the anniversary of our case going before the UN. So, is that a coincidence? So that's kind of where our family has decided to see this through, and for all the right reasons,
Most definitely. So, Gentry, I got a question for you for sure. As you've come into this, and obviously Thom has been brought into this from his own experiences as a child, and him and his family experienced him. Obviously, it's led him on this lifelong journey. A lot of people say, when you get into this, it's kind of this weird lifelong journey type of thing. And so what really brought you to kind of like come into the adventure? Yep, and just be sure to unmute. Just check on your mic. Yep.
Borderline agnostic atheist, did not grow up in this world at all, and nor was I when this was all changed dramatically. I grew up just Southern Baptist with in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then got a divorce later on in life. And after that, I had a premonition. So this premonition made me completely question my existence, it shattered my perception of reality, honestly, because I just couldn't, I needed to find answers to bridge this gap between how this is scientifically possible. And the spiritual aspect of it, because it was just alarming in both regards. So it was that event that took this off. It was about 2.5 years ago. And then, like a flood, it has been experience after experience. The most prominent being a sighting on Earth Day of 2022 with 6 friends. on a patio on a beautiful summer evening. It was still clear, and there was a big cube UFO that was huge. But the sky, all of it pretty much looked like a video game. And I had an instantaneous musical ability, had never even touched an instrument or been interested in music in my life. Couldn't even clap on beat. At church would have to watch the person next to me. And the next thing I know, literally, we walked to see a band across the street after this sighting, and I know exactly what to do somehow. And yeah, so here I am figuring it out.
Whoa. What was the first instrument you picked up after that experience?
The guitar. It was the guitar.
Had you played the guitar before?
No. And my dad I take that back. My dad bought me an electric guitar when I was 16, I think, and I played with it for maybe a week. That was it.
What was it like after
It was pretty daunting.
Yeah.
It was pretty daunting because all my friends were there, and the musicians that witnessed this were shocked because it's unique in that it's not like you play me a song and I memorize the song and then I can then play it like savant syndrome typically is. This is in real time. Like you play the song and I play it with you in perfect. It is flawless. If you mess up, I mess up too. There's not like one missed note.
So you become bridged with the other person
instantaneously, and it's bled over into other areas of my life too. Like I will, before a car horn, booms at me, I'm already shrieking. And I can like move to the sound of certain things I never thought like I could, like the sound of a creek or the water, just the water flowing or thunder. It's pretty weird.
So you hear
I don't even.
So you hear kind of music and everyday things that you wouldn't have normally picked up on prior.
Well, it's not that I hear it; it's that I anticipate it. So it's like I'm somehow the vibration hits me first.
I get that, like precognition.
Yeah.
Okay. I can relate to that. I can understand that. That's interesting. Yeah. So you can kind of just feel it before it happens.
Yes. And it's just so random. But I mean, musicians here, think I'm reading their minds. I'm like, I assure you, there's no words coming out. But sometimes actually there are.
Yeah, so just picking up on a different vibration probably. And this happened after your UFO experience.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Within minutes.
Wow. Did you see any beings?
No, I did not. We did not. But however, the next day, there was an interesting interaction with a person that had a heavy, thick French accent, and he beelined it straight to me when I was with my friends once again, and said he flew there from France. And I don't remember a single word that he said after. Beelined it straight to me when I was with my friends once again, and said he flew there from France. And I don't remember a single word that he said after that. And I ran over to my friends afterwards while they were watching this intense eye-locked conversation. And I was trying to tell them what he said, but they said I was already speaking gibberish. I had no idea what he said. That was weird. And he introduced himself. He was like 7 feet tall.
No way.
Blonde. And he introduced himself to one of my friends who was really protective of me as he said his name is Alan, but in France they spell it Alien. I'm like, oh my God. so cliche and funny if that's
Do
real.
you think this person was even from this earth that came up, this French man named Aline who was 7 feet tall? Was he an entity? Was this a human, or was this just
Probably. I mean, more than
some
likely.
incarnation? Okay.
More than likely. I mean, that's the that's the most realistic if we're really looking at this like that. Then it's the
Yeah,
most
man.
realistic. Because I don't remember a thing he said. Not one. Except for that he just flew there from France to meet with me. So I'm not sure. But
You probably that's very fascinating. I'm sorry, this is just fascinating because you have a memory of him being like, "Hey, girl, Gentry, I flew from France to see you," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was it. Then you blacked out.
Yes.
And
And
he disappeared.
what's really interesting is that I haven't even thought about that. Maybe a handful of times, all of this time, all these months, 2 years later. And my friends are the ones that make a big deal about that over the UFO. And that they just reminded me of that recently. And I'm just now really baffled as to why I don't even think about that. But it was alarming. I don't remember the context of the conversation.
Yes.
So
That's alarming.
So do you
Go ahead,
think
Thom.
that this is where the ability came from? Was your encounter with him this musical ability, or did you already have it by the time you had met him?
I already had it. And an out of body experience that same night where I had someone to witness this too. I turned on a light in the room and I walked back over to my bed and I crawled back in my body. And that's when my friend woke up, like freaking out who turned on the light. And I remember, and I was having sleep paralysis and going, "Oh my God, I just woke up in the laundry room." And you know,
I have that too. I understand that.
that's
Yes.
it was so wild.
It's awful. It's the worst. Sleep paralysis, sleepwalking. Yeah, I
Mhm.
hate it.
Mhm. It's pretty does tricks
But
on you.
So I wanted to mention
yes.
one thing before we move on. My son, who has had experiences as well, has also somehow been able to do these mathematical equations and things that no one's ever been able to figure out. And I actually did one or two with Gentry and a few other people. And to this day, they're just absolutely, baffled by these strange things. I mean, I could do it with you on the show actually, but if you had time. But it is kind of interesting that, and he proved to be, he tested highly coincidental chance and remote viewing and things of that nature. So, if time allows, we can do it at the end of the show if you'd like.
That
Yeah,
does
I think
sound interesting.
that savant sort of I got that idea from I didn't know what to call this for the longest time, and I still don't, because it's not quite savant syndrome. I mean, there is a definite complete 1,000,000% shift in how I interpret and think about music even, um, and how I see the geometry in my head and all sorts of strange things. But like Tom's son, it's like that came out with math. So Dr. Bruce Lipton is the one that turns me onto this idea of it being savant-like, where it's acquired savant syndrome. And I'm not the only one apparently that has had these interactions with these beings, and it's unlocked something. I just have never heard of anybody having it musically yet. So if you're out there, anybody, come let me know.
Looking for you, anybody? Well, I'm just
Mhm.
looking up what an acquired musical savant. So, whom?
Usually it's from
Okay,
like
a
a traumatic
prominent,
brain
highly
injury.
owned, yeah, usually within a single and are very conspicuous when viewed in contrast. Well, I mean, that's so. So you like to sing? I would think. Are you a singer?
No, but I can.
Yeah. What's your favorite instrument?
The theremin.
Ooh, what is? I don't even know what that is. What is that?
It is, it's like there's essentially two rods that are connected at one end, and in between is this area of energy that you can manipulate with your fingers. So you're not even touching anything. You're just going.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, but
That sounds awesome.
You're like,
nice. Very good. I like it.
Beats the
you are
trumpet.
you are so much fun, Gentry. I just like I can't wait to meet you in person one day. I know what's gonna happen. You just seem like you're so much fun.
you
And
too. I've been stalking you and watching all of your videos and your, crystal, connection and breathing. I'm like, damn, this girl's got it going on. That's the real stuff.
well, that is the real stuff. That's what you're deep into. I'm following people like you that I've met who are like, look, and I just like, oh, their chakras seem so clear. They seem so nice. I want to be like them. But half the time, I don't even know what the spiritual journey is, but I'll go down it wherever I can go down it,
Yeah.
So I meet people like you guys, and then you guys are like, we're so 5D. And like, so what's your experience like walking into that 5D world?
It's alarming. I have had experiences where I've been put, like, I want to say forced, but it wasn't. I could have easily stopped it. It was beautiful, but gone into like full on Tai Chi. And this experience of when I was meditating, it turned into a crazy experience of healing my TMJ that I'd had since I was 12. And it was like a serpent was actually literally or physically like making my tongue slither and weird stuff that it actually freaked me out for like 6 months. I couldn't even meditate because it scared me. But now it doesn't. A lot. It's very bizarre. And it has come in like the floodgates of the Nile, if there were any.
It's freaking fascinating, man. Thom, question for you.
Yeah.
Very big question for you, because this is also a great question for you.
Oh,
You stepping into the 5D, what's that like? You know what I mean when I say the 5D? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean,
yeah, the fifth dimension, right?
Yeah. So I've had so many experiences in my life that I don't even know where to. It's almost like I was meant to be different, and I don't kind of try to categorize things anymore because it's all like one to me. It's all just my life. Like to give you an idea, after we had these events in Massachusetts, the '69 event is what everybody knows, but there were 4 or 5 in the area that growing up that I was part of, and so was the neighborhood. And then my father decided to move out of state and buy this house, which was the property where the brutal Connecticut murder took place, a death in Canaan. And that was a cottage and an old post office that they fixed up and rented out as a house. And this Barbara Gibbons, Peter Riley case where she was slain, and they blamed the son for it. And so they were so busy focusing on him that the real killer got away. And that's when I started having experiences with, smudge marks and cold spots and just feeling uncomfortable and all of a sudden feeling sick. And then you walk away and you're okay. And then, of course, even our cat fell out of a tree. Well, that never happens, right? And so these things started happening to our family. It was dark. And then after that, my son one day, he was, I don't know, 3 months old. We were living in Florida,
It's a good one.
And so my wife and I woke up in the middle of the night and we just looked at each other. It was like we talked about this afterwards, like they had the same dream. And then we run across the living room, the rocking chair is moving, all the doors are open in our kitchen cabinets in the kitchen. And we get to my son and he's face down with blood in his nose. He was too weak and young to even roll himself over, and then, I almost died and I had this after death experience and where I was in like a cloud and I found myself, landing on a boat in the middle of the ocean. And then I woke up in the hospital. And then, of course, these abilities that my son has that I've been able to pick up on. and do with him. And so there's so many things that are just moving all the time within our family or myself in general that I don't even know what is really considered normal for me. What dimension do I really live in? Do I believe in parallel universes? I'm not going to rule it out. What we saw UFO wise, or however you want to word that, whatever acronym you want to use, UAP, whatever. Um, that was nuts and bolts to us. It wasn't something that was spiritual. That was something that was factual. So that, to me, if it's factual, then it's really not paranormal. But what we experience around it in our lives is paranormal. I would put it that way. Sounds. You see that little Anubis dog back there? Okay, so I was walking by this store had it, right. It's 250 pounds. It's made out of solid black oak. It was like it was calling my name, right? So years ago, I walked by the store, didn't sell, it was very expensive. And I finally saw it marked down a little bit, so I grabbed it. Ever since I put it in my house, we don't have these smudge marks that fly across our walls anymore. And so one day, we saw this black wall that was about the size of an overhead door for a garage. And it went right past my house down the road. I was with the president of the HOA here, and he saw it with me. You couldn't see through it. It was a solid black, perfectly squared off smudge, if you will. And around that same week, my carpenter that was working on the upstairs balcony had left his tool bag here. So he called me to come back and get it. It was dark. It was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. He knocks on my door. I open it, and he steps in and slams it, and saw what he thought was a black cat running up the staircase. What I saw sitting right back there was a smudge mark about the size of a loaf of bread go right across the wall, take a turn, and went up the staircase. So this is how I live. This becomes normal to me. So if it's normal to me, am I really living in a different type of dimension, or is this where I've always lived?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It is
It's
strange.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead.
It's strange to hear him in these stories he tells to me about. I'm baffled as to why he's not screaming them from the rooftops, like this happened, and he's, it's just his normal, which I can relate to because it's my normal now. I had a praying mantis on my roof not too long ago, like a 10-foot tall praying mantis. I'm just saying I go and shout that, I'm yelling at everybody. I'm like, you want to see my video of a praying mantis on my roof? Whoever
Okay, wait, slow down. Slow down, Gentry. 1 second, sweetie. Slow down. Okay, 10-foot praying mantis on your roof. I love you so much. You're like everything I've ever asked for.
Well, if I can just check out, then I'll just.
Yeah, I'd be so amazing. So, wait, can you tell me? Because maybe there was the kid in Vegas who saw the aliens in his backyard. So,
I went on Fox. I talked about that on Fox with.
I remember. Tom.
Yeah.
I was in Vegas when you were on the news a few weeks later.
Okay.
Anyway.
Actually, I've seen the photos and the video she's talking about.
Yeah. I was cleaning crystals outside. My kids were in bed, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I hear owls coming from far away, and they kept getting closer, but it was fast. It all happened very fast. Next thing I know, they're in my backyard, and they are going nuts. Like, whoa, it sounds like a monkey, but you get it. They're going crazy. And so I get out my phone to film, and I'm just, like, whoa, this is nuts. And then something like catches my attention over to the right, and I see what looks like a UFO in the sky. And it didn't surprise me because about maybe 4 times before this, anytime I saw a UFO, there were owls involved. But then I go to bed and I wake up the next morning and I review the footage, and there is this entity on my roof, and it is clear as day. So this is my 4th interaction with this being. So I knew exactly what it was, and I can show you the video. I'll send it to you right now if you want. So I'm visually with my eyes, it was in the footage the next day. So if it seems like that's exactly what it was meant for, was for me to have this video. Like, here you go, you know.
Yeah, just email it our way and we'll pop it up on the show right now. That sounds fantastic. You know, God bless you. I'm so glad that you're okay. That stuff is, I'm excited to see what you got. I mean, this stuff can be life-changing, and you know, this stuff needs to get out there. You know, we got to share it out, make sure the world sees it, because sometimes it's easy to overlook, which is why I think everybody does go through the documents. You know, I think that's why Thom's interested in the documents, why everybody gets interested on how can we triangulate the correct information, right? And I think right now, between the 3 of us, this is a really great place to release alien footage.
I am down with that. I will show you. I mean,
honestly, I would consider all 3 of us legit. We'll take it together as a team to the world right now.
Let's do it. It is downloading. I'm sorry about that. It's working on.
Oh no, yeah. Take your time. Take your time. I'm just gonna have Thom jump on here while you're working on that. See what Thom's up to. I'm sure he's always up to something.
Well, I could use another drink.
There we go.
I might need to freshen that up a little bit. Yeah, I don't know where to, you know, what
I got questions.
You know, what they don't know. I would say that, you know, I could give you an idea of why I am hesitant to run with our family having, you know, a bona fide or a typical abduction experience, and this is why we feel the way we do. And I could be wrong. You know, I've been wrong before. We're all, you know, I'm not a machine, for God's sakes. I go by what I feel, what I think, what I remember, and collectively, you know, we have to make sense of what we lived through, right? And so when you live in a community or an area, the Berkshires, and you have Command Aerospace, Pratt and Whitney, you know, General Electric, Sprague Electric, which made the Goodwill Message, and all these that was left on the moon, and all these manufacturing facilities are being funded by NASA, which was in Boston. A lot of people don't realize NASA had a big presence in Cambridge, right across from MIT. And so our government was giving, you know, NASA millions, if not billions of dollars that were being filtered into the community we lived in 1969. That's a lot of money. And so people were coming in from all these other cities, states, Hartford, Boston, whatever. And so you had this influx of all these engineers, all those that would forge things. And we were also making weapons back then too. Don't kid yourself. It wasn't all just capacitors, right? And this was all being done within, I don't objects. You know, the first thing some were thinking of, well, maybe we're back engineering something, right? In a matter of respect, you know, maybe this is coming from one of these manufacturing facilities. And, you know, we had gone through the bridge and we came out the other side. There was a sphere, a white sphere it looked like a cue ball, you know, tightly crisp, mildly lit, and rose from the banks of the Housatonic River. And then off to the right, there was another one, which my brother saw first, which was orange and it had a rolling to it. Like I said, Unsolved Mysteries, or Netflix, if you will. It was like the center was turning, almost looked like a sun. My brother referred to it as like an ocean wave that was turning. So this one was like a solid white glow. This one was smaller, lower to the water, but had something moving in it. And so being at this road and the way the bridge was, when you hit the bridge, you had to go up, it leveled off, and then you came down, right? So it's not like today where you just, if it was open, it's not, but if it was, you could just drive right through it, right? It wasn't like that. And you had these boards that had cracks in these big planks. And so they would rattle, clink, 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 as you went across it. And as you came down, there were potholes because this road was really for horse and buggy. It was never meant for cars. And so we were only going, my point is, we were only going like 5 miles an hour. And so as we were going, it wasn't like we were driving fast and trying to catch a glimpse of this thing. We were going like maybe as fast as you could run. That's about it. And so we saw this thing, the white one, and it went up behind a line of trees. And so as we were going, it was kind of going the same as our car. And so my mother pulled over next to this telephone pole, which was a little area where, utility trucks would park. So you could actually pull off a little bit. And across the way was all open field, right? And so we're looking for this white sphere. We never saw it again. I don't believe we did. And then off in the distance, we saw what looked like a turtle shell, had like a pewter, a goldish tint to it. And I refer to it as the front of it had like a glow because, I'm looking at the front of my car, thing was, circular, but in the direction our car would be going, if that was the front, they had a reddish glow on top, which is one thing that stuck in my mind when they interviewed Melanie Kirchdorfer because she's the only one who mentioned that reddish light, and it wasn't like a light, like the whole body or shell of it kind of started bright, tapered off, and there were no lights underneath it that I remember. There were no, landing gear, windows, nothing like that. It was very industrial. And then we heard tapping, like when you were deep in a swimming pool, like tap, 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 and came back to me when I had an MRI, except the tapping was much higher pitched. And but we were already stopped, so there was nothing, no stones hitting underneath our fender wall or anything, which is the closest thing that I can refer to or that mirror is what I heard, and then there was this like a flash of light, which might have been that white sphere, but I don't remember seeing it. And then the inside of our car lit up. I could see the dashboard. I could see the back of my mother's hair, the door handles, and pretty much everything. The radio was like, but it wasn't blinding me. It wasn't like a bright light. And then there was this silence, like someone just, turned the sound off of life itself. And then we just felt weird. It was like we were deep underwater and again, but totally muted. And then that's really the last thing, I remember until the crickets and katydids came back and everything like erupted really loudly. But then I was no longer in the car. And so my mother, my grandmother, my brother, and I all found ourselves, in what we best can describe as like an empty airplane hangar. But where we were was a lot bigger than what we saw. We weren't on the craft. We were somewhere much bigger. And so this room was like empty. There was a light, like a single fluorescent tube, and then a space and a single fluorescent tube is what it looked like, where the ceiling met the wall, right in line there. And it was fairly dark, but enough light that I could see. And then I remember being grabbed really hard on the left arm, and I was brought out a doorway and basically handed off to someone else who took me down this very tall, narrow hallway, very lit up, and that kind of almost like an MRI room maybe. And then where the glass kind of met the wall, there was an opening on the right and opening on the left, which was like a doorway. And at one point, I felt very, placid, and I don't remember why I was sitting down and doing what I was doing, and like everything was okay, And then I remember being scared all of a sudden, and I darted out the door. I went into this big open area, which I've referred to my whole life as like being a big empty Walmart. It was that big. So if you look at the airplane hangar area, what it resembled anyway, the hallways in this other area, I mean, it was 3 to 4 to 5 times bigger than what we saw. And so I was brought back in again harshly. And that's something else I want to, it hurt, you know. These were humans, it hurt. And I was put back on this table, and the table rose like this, with like a thing like this. And then another one came down from the top. So the two met, like that. And this big cage came over me, and it was in two separate pieces. The first piece came over me, but wasn't so tight to my body that I couldn't see down. It was not against my skin or anything. And then the second one came over that, so they kind of went like this, and these holes on the sides lined up, and there was these hands that came through, and there were these like huge looking. These things look like big raisins. Bumped to my head, and then I woke up. If you want a word, woke up, whatever, came to in this big open area where I was first introduced to this airplane hangar looking area. And then I was back in the car. Now, when I got back in the car, or when all of us were returned to the vehicle, however that happened, my grandmother was now in the driver's seat, and my mother was in the passenger seat. Again, kind of like human error. But at the same time, when we stopped and we're looking at this craft that looked like the turtle shell, the car was running and the headlights were on. When my parents found themselves back in the car, at least my grandmother was the only one, or the first one to come to. She swears that she had to turn the ignition key. And sure, hours had gone by, but that to me does not sound like a typical abduction incident. And I'll tell you something else that stands out. We didn't come to at the same time. My grandmother was the first to come to. And being the oldest one, if it was a human involvement, there's a good chance they thought that the 40-year-old woman was driving, because my mother at the time was only 29, right? And so my grandmother takes the car down, turns it, goes down the dirt road, the bridge road, turns around, goes back into town, and she was really shaken up. She actually missed the first entrance to this restaurant near, or I should say convenience store next to our restaurant, where she was going for help, because we lived miles away, but we were only like less than a mile from the closest area to get help, where the police department was, the gas station, the city hall was right there. And so she went there for help. And because my mother wasn't responding, I wasn't responding, my brother's head was on my leg. He was out completely. And so when my grandmother stopped finally to get out of the car to go in to use the phone and say, listen, we need some help, it wasn't until she got in there that she realized it was almost 11 o'clock. This happened at 8:30, 8:45 at the latest, because it was just getting dusk. And so I was grabbing her arm. I'm like, Nana, I'm like, because I woke up second, and I had gone in. Nobody else was responding to me. So I run in, grabbing her, right? And the weird thing was that she was kind of out of it. So she had walked. When she came in, right, there was an interaction with her and the clerk or the guy at the register, but she had gone past him too and gone to the back of the store. And when I first saw her, she was in like this half circle of children's bikes and strollers. And she had a little stroller like a child was in it, and she was pushing it back and forth. And I'm grabbing her arm trying to pull her, but I'm trying to pull her through the bikes. It makes no sense. I mean, I wasn't thinking clearly either. And then she finally, comes around, or the clerk actually came out, and they met near the bikes and everything. And they stood there for a while. And I thought she was going to ask for help or whatever, but the paramedics never showed up. The police never showed up. But if she had actually called, she would have known at that time that Tom J., the radio personality for WSBS Radio, had already been working in conjunction with the local police department to go on the radio and ask for help. Now, you'll see in Unsolved Mysteries, this is another mistake they made, that Jan Green says, boom, boom, boom. I went on and knocked on the door of WSBS radio to say, that she saw this thing or whatever. And he makes a comment about swamp gas or whatever stupid comment that was. That's because they had gone on the air. Like WSBS went off the air like 5 or 6 o'clock. He was speaking, the DJ was speaking with the police department, and they wanted to go back on the air to say, hey guys, if you can hear me, interrupt the broadcast. If you see this thing, tell us where it is so we can dispatch the police. And that's why Jan Green heard it and went back down to the station. But then Unsolved Mystery says they interviewed the police department and they didn't have any record of it. The jury's out. That wasn't the Sheffield Police Department. It wasn't even the town police department. That was a different town altogether. So why would they do that? And then they left all the documents out and everything else. But whatever, it was a terrible episode. Anyway, there were a lot of things that could have been very different if my grandmother had actually made the call to the police. But I will say this too, that night, it was reported by some golfers at Jug Inn Resort in South Egremont, which is like part of Great Barrington and Sheffield. It's like an area pocket in between the two towns. And so with that time when Tom J got on the air and was asking for people to, call in to give everyone an idea of where this thing was. Because at the time they thought it was just one object, but it was 3 objects. And so with that, it was reported and it got a classification, a CE classification from Jug Inn, but it was reported near the bridge. And so Galata, who was also on Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix, the chief of police, Galata, went with his son to look where they had seen this thing land. Now, I didn't see it land. When we saw it, it was hovering. It might have looked like it landed. Maybe it did land later on, but they were dispatched. The Sheffield police was dispatched to see, if they could find it on the ground somewhere. And that area now is a cornfield. And what's interesting, the corn grows to be, the size of your arm. It grows 15 to 17 feet high. It grows higher there than anywhere else. There's weird anomalies. There's people get sick when they go there. They claim their sneakers glow. I've actually seen some of that myself. I was there with Sean Payne Stowe and a few others. And when we walked into these certain areas where nothing grows at all, you can almost see, it looks like your sneakers are glowing. So maybe there's luminescent in the stone or rock or ground. But it's pretty intense. It's almost like, wow, it looks like a black light on your sneakers, and it doesn't do it 5 feet away where the corn's growing. So it's hard to make sense of what's really happening there as well. And we've had people go down and test the water and everything else. And so, with that, the next morning, we go to open up the diner, my mother's diner, Village Green, and just to find that over the radio, we had this low white radio over where the stove was, the grill. And we're hearing all these people, calling in saying, I saw that. I saw it here. I saw it there. And not everyone, but a lot of the people eating breakfast were like, that's my mother. That's my grandmother. And so it kind of added those who knew something was happening but didn't want to talk about it. It kind of assured them that, hey, I'm not alone. Because one-on-one, people weren't talking about it. Like they said in Unsolved Mysteries, no one talked about it. Well, that's because they were working for the secret space program. And if you talked about UFOs and you're working on a secret space program, you could lose your job because it was a secret, program. And that's why they didn't talk about it. But inside our diner, my mother was from New York City, Hollis, Queens, and my father from Patchogue, Long Island. They didn't care what, they were like, this, talk about whatever you want in here. I don't care, And so with the jukebox being the only spot you could listen to music, because there was no FM radio station, and that's where the best food was in town, and you could talk openly about the UFO topic, it was found out in 2015 that our diner played a role in altering the natural progression of the entire community. Therefore, our family's event was historically true. That's how it got inducted. And if you look at all the letters from the state, they refer to it as an off-world incident, but I still don't know how we were extracted from the vehicle, and why did it hurt? And why did we all wake up at a different time? You know? And why was my grandmother and mother reversed in the vehicle? Why was the ignition turned off? You know, it sounds really, to me, it sounds like there was a government involvement. So we maybe were somewhere we weren't supposed to be. There was a communication between the objects that affected the neurons in our head, perhaps, what is easiest for me to make sense of. And we all felt the same way. So at the same time, so it almost seems like it was something physical that took over, not individually, different way. We all felt the same. We all saw the same thing. I remember hearing my mother's voices wherever I was, which was much bigger than the vehicle or vessel or craft we saw. So unless that craft was also in the area we were, then I could say, yeah, we were on a craft because we were in it in something bigger. But where we were was, let's say 5 to 10 times larger than the craft itself. Now the craft was about 100 yards. It was pretty big. But that room that looked like an empty Walmart, my God, that was just like huge. And then the airplane-like hangar that I was in prior to that was also huge. And then the hallways, and then this room with the bowed-in glass wall. So, I don't want to overstep. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But, it seems to me that there was definitely some military involvement, in what we experienced anyway. That makes sense?
Yes. And what I think is so interesting is we've just unpackaged something, or you have just unpackaged something for me and maybe my viewers about how sometimes when we get these reports that come out in the news and they say, this is Thom Reed, Thom Reed's been abducted, they just threw you into the abductee category. That's not what happened to you. It sounds like from your perspective that there was a lot of human error associated with this experience, meaning it may have been government, more than likely your perception. Is that a consensus of what your family said, that this is probably just
the whole
humans?
area? I mean, the historians and all those who like my mother was like the surrogate parent for the community. So this is something else that goes with where you're going with this, and I have to mention this. Back in the day, the school buses didn't go to all the farm homes, right? That field, whatever it was they're making, or cattle, corn, whatever it was. And so the dad would get up, hypothetically at 5 a.m, right? Work the fields or whatever. And the mom's job was to get the child off to school. Well, the school bus, would park or pick everyone up, I should say, at some intersection, maybe a mile, half a mile from the house, right? Because these farming, the land was massive. You're talking one person. It wasn't uncommon for someone to have like 15 or 20 acres, right? They were all farmers. And so rather than drop the child off and have them, your 8 or 10-year-old wait at a corner on the side of the road at 7 o'clock in the morning, they would just drive them to our diner. So my mom ran a tab. What do you want? I'll have French toast. And the next kid, I'll have pancakes, whatever. And so she ran a tab for the community, and the children would eat, listen to the jukebox in the morning, whatever. And I'll walk or ride their banana seat bikes to school together, because you could walk to elementary school from there. I mean, it wasn't even a quarter mile away. And basically, you walked up a half a block, took a left, crossed the street where the police were, and bang, you were on the property of the school. And so it was those children back in the day that remember all this. Some of them are historians, some are bankers, one of them's a judge. And so they never wavered. They all stuck to their guns. They all know they were part of this. They all remember it vividly, because you could also see the community change. You had those who were never going to believe any of this, right? And then you had those who started to act differently. The children that were starting to bond together that normally wouldn't be friends. And then you had those who were just like, even the parents, there were some that were more astute, and their family member worked at Sprague or GE or whatever. And then you had those that were more farmers who just thought this was silliness, the suspenders and so there was this big dynamic. Because at a horse track, you brought in a lot of people with money from, Albany, Hartford, and then you had the local farmer. So it was a huge change in personality. And of course, you had fights that broke out in the diner because of that, you know? And so again, there were police reports over the topic, which also kind of showed a pattern of that, or added to that division that our diner caused. And actually, my mother met my stepfather through the diner back then because somebody had jumped up on a table and exposed himself and said something to the effect, according to my mom, "You want to see something out of this world? You know, I'll show you." You know, and my mom's like, "Ah," and then she met my stepdad, who basically had told the guy to sit down, and if he wanted to finish his meal inside, he'd watch what he said, apologize to the lady, and or you can pick yourself up and your stuff and get the hell out. And so my mom's like, "Oh, my hero," right? That's how they met. So, but just to give you an idea, that's what it was like back then. And of course, my mom would get followed home, guys in pickup trucks. The police had attacked us at one point and beat me and left me in a pool of blood. Later on, because I was talking about the fixed horse track and the things that were also happening there. And don't listen to him; they'll tell you there's UFOs flying around here too. And of course, I think I showered him with a couple colorful metaphors or something, and so it ended up in a hospital. But there's so many things that never get mentioned. The fact that it's inducted into state by the governor and the lieutenant governor and sealed by a circuit court judge. There was actually one of those kids in our diner.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. And that brings me to another big question that I have for you after the experience you've had with your family, after coming forward, after dedicating part of your life to making sure that your voice is heard and that your story's heard. My big question for you is what is going on right now with David Grush, Lou Elizondo? What's this look like? Because you study this. What's your summary? What the hell's going on with everything?
Well, I can tell you that during the hearings that morning, I got a text from Tim Burchett. So a lot of people don't realize that Tim Burchett used to be the mayor of the town I live in. So he hangs out at the same places I eat, and so I wouldn't say we're close friends, but it's, "Hey Tom, what's going on? Hey Tim, want to join us? I'm good. I'll see you later, whatever." It's kind of like that, like a regular acquaintance, right? Not really a friend. But after the hearings too, he texted me, and a few people had asked me, "What'd you think?" And I said, "I think your whistleblower left his whistle at home," because now, I'm going to get criticized for this, but it is what it is. Grush is not a whistleblower. A whistleblower reveals first-hand information. Everything Grush said came from someone else. It's hearsay. He was fed to the general public as a whistleblower. The information he put forth is true. It is. 90% of it, from what I hear, is true. But he's not a whistleblower. So it's kind of like, the documents that he turned over. Now, whether, we'll just take whatever. He's got a document. He says, "I got this," right? Well, if that document did not go through a law firm to be authenticated as a copy of the original, because I seriously doubt he's got a copy of the original of anything. So he has a copy. A copy can't be looked at as a source document or anything that can be ruled on unless it's been authenticated and gone through some type of a process to assure and seal it through by a magistrate and gone through a court system or be seen by a judge to say, "Yes, we swear that this document is a copy of the original." Then it can be looked at and used in court. Just like if you're selling a property, you can't go in with copies of documents. They have to be the originals, or they have to be sealed and gone through. Yes, this is a copy, but it is a true copy of the original. Therefore, it can be used as a source document. He didn't have that either. Everything he released came from somebody else. So theoretically, they all could have been lying to him. I'm not saying they were, but he's not a whistleblower. He didn't put forth any firsthand information that he personally saw himself. And so the real whistleblowers were behind closed doors, and they were giving him the information which he was relaying, so that the real whistleblowers, those that were really testifying and giving the information, could stay, protected and hidden. That's what he was doing. But he himself, and for all these people that are so-called experts to not know that, are you kidding me? You run around, oh, the whistleblower. Really? What did he share personally? Nothing. Nothing. Not one thing.
But like you said, 90% of it's probably true. And people like us who've been researching it, we feel pretty, I mean, I don't know. I feel pretty good about it. You said 90%. You feel pretty good about it.
I'm not saying that, I'm not putting him down for what he did. I'm just saying for people to assume he's a whistleblower, right? They know better than that. So it's still the person that was pitched to the, to the general public and the media outlets as the whistleblower. But anyway, I would like to see where it goes. I mean, I have sat down with Tim after the hearings, and I was actually with one of the guys from the behavior panel. You ever seen those guys on YouTube? Yeah,
of course. I love that show. Who doesn't love that
I was
show?
with Scott. Scott lives in Nashville, and so Scott went with me, and we went to, it's like it's a marina that has a bar and a restaurant, and he was with us when he came in with his secretary Jennifer, and so there's like 3 or 4 of us. We were all just talking about so many different things. I gave him information that my father had brought back from the UN, or his attorney did anyway. I gave him a pamphlet like this thick, and so anyway, super nice guy, and we talked, and he shared some things with me that I can't say, I could tell you off the air probably, but anyway, so that's that. So that's what I think about the hearings now. As far as Lou Elizondo, I don't know. I think the jury's out. I mean, I don't know. The only problem I have, or the only thing I question, is that if like doing a podcast or going somewhere, I'm not capitalizing. I'm not making money at anything. I'm okay. I don't need it. I need it. Of course, I would like to have it, but I'm just saying, I'm not here doing what I do because I need to be financially, compensated for it. I know Lou's charged some pretty stiff, he's put forth some pretty big invoices for his appearances. And I wonder,
wait,
why,
You know the number, don't you? You know
I
the
do know the
amount you
number.
paid to go to the Roswell Festival, don't you? Do you know what that number is?
I do know what they
Oh, is it over 10?
Yeah. People go down there and mow it for me as a favor or something. But I think when you're involved in a topic as sensitive as this, and you have so many people telling ridiculous stories, right, that aren't true because they want to write a book or they want to, whatever, capitalize in some way. And then you've got cases like me where it's personal. I lost my father. I'm 99% sure, people just don't die on the same day your case goes before the UN. When you're 54 years old and perfectly healthy, And then Robert Bletchman lost his life about 8 months later, but I heard it was through cancer, and maybe it was, but something's off. We have a I've had key point government solutions knock on my door and sit me down on my front steps. They're the Department of Homeland Security. They asked me if I travel, internationally. Am I savvy with computers? All these things. And I had to raise my hand and swear to the Privacy Act of 1974. And then they left. We were run off the road by a private investigator. We took him to court. Come to find out, he was hired to intimidate us. I mean, that's the truth. And I was with my lawyer. We were in her black Lexus, and so it was more for her than it was me. But these are the kind of things that really happen to those people who have bona fide events or are part of something that's extreme. I had 3 credit cards canceled per my request. I didn't cancel my own credit cards. All right. So what I would say is that I think if you're trying to make money in this field, that's a red flag to me. but then again, if you are someone who is losing money because they could be doing something else and they got to fly somewhere to speak or something like that, and then I think you should be compensated. If a couple $100 or whatever to say thank you for coming, whether it's 5,000, whatever it is, um, you know, it's that's like when I hold a conference, UFO Expo, I give the guys a little honorarium, and they do their thing, and we all get together, we hang out, we have drinks, we're all like a family, right? I mean, that's what's lacking in this community is family, right? Everyone's pointing fingers, but if let me put it to you this way. Let me kind of back up and say, if I was charging, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go somewhere and talk, I lose my credibility, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that I'm not writing books to sell them to capitalize. I'm writing a book which over an event with our family that happened 55 years ago. If I wanted to capitalize, I would have wrote a book 35 years ago, not wait 55 years, right? I'm doing that to preserve it only because so many other people have tainted it. It's become like a circus. No one even knows what happened anymore. And so, for that reason, I out of respect for my father and his role and my mother's diner, which was significant in all this, that's all forgotten, and it shouldn't be, because that's what made our case what it is. I know I saw something off world. I know I saw this insect type of thing. I did see that. It had a head like a football, and it was like it had long legs or limbs that looked like bamboo. It had like wine colored rings around them. I remember that, but that's not what grabbed me by the arm.
Wait, back up. Go back. You just talked about an entity. Go back. Can you go slower this time and say it again? That was very interesting and a lot for me to process, and it happened very fast.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
So the entity. Okay, so you saw an entity.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes, I saw two standing side by side.
Okay.
I was on that table with where it looked like raisin packs, this big friggin' yeah, like a little smaller than a tennis ball. There were two entities to the left of that glassed-in wall that had doorways, and there was something in the wall, and these heads that looked like footballs, pretty much like a football, were facing the wall. They had legs or limbs, if you will, that reminded me of bamboo. You know how bamboo is kind of weird? It's got the knots, and then it has these rings. Well, they had what looked like wine-colored rings, and they were like, were they alive? Were they robotic? Uncanny Valley? I have no idea. But there was no way that these were suits or anything, because the body was very odd, staring at a wall. I believe one looked at the other or whatever. I remember seeing them move. And that was basically it for that. Now, the Roswell Museum has had a head or a face of this thing that was made for them by a boy who went to my college back in Connecticut. And he knew about it, and he took an art class or whatever, and he was able to make this thing as close to what I remember as possible. And then there's an artist in Colombia who made this piece for the Roswell Museum, which is almost exactly, I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's as close to what I remember as anyone could have made. And I know it's going to be on display this year for the first time. And so, it looks fragile. It's a little smaller than I remember. But then again, I was a child, right? So everything seems bigger. So it might be, So, yes, I did see some off-world entities. I don't believe they were robotic, although they could be, only because of the way they appeared to look, like they had skin like was like a gray and black type of skin, mostly gray. The head was like a fire ant. You know how it's like reddish and translucent, and you can kind of see, almost looks like you can see through the head of a fire ant. The head was like that. So it reminded me more of an ant on two legs, is the best way to describe it. It is what it
Okay.
is. I've
Can
done
I just go through, for the sake of the viewers, can I just go through like a baseline information real quick? Okay. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we have you here. You were in your car with your family. The UFO comes. There's lots of interesting physical sort of things. You kind of go out. You find yourself and your family in an airplane hangar where your car is at. And how does this come? Because then now you're having these foggy. Is this happening here at the hangar, or am I crazy?
Well, I didn't say it was an airplane hangar. I said it resembled one.
Okay.
I don't know if it was an airplane hangar. I don't, I was 9, almost 10 years old. I don't know what it was, but it reminded me of that because of the tall ceilings and being empty. And my mother and father were pilots. They had single engine planes. They weren't theirs. They flew them. And so when I had gone with them when they went flying as a child, that's the closest thing that I can reference what I saw. Was it an airplane hangar? Very possibly, but I don't know for sure. And this was not really where my car was. I was taken from the car and brought there. So where was I taken? I don't know. But there were an awful lot of military manufacturing facilities in the area, and who made helicopters and everything else. So I don't know where I was. But there were Nike missile sites, Minuteman missile sites. The NORAD towers were in Dalton. There's still one there, you know. But like I said, there were government being seen and jeeps coming out of the woods. There were people. They were noticing government agents, on radios walking in the area in the woods. Who knows? I know that there's big metal covers where the rockets would come out. If there was right, and so it had high elevation. It's just like, if you were going to hide anything, man, that's the Berkshire's the place to do it. Everybody talks about, Area 51 or whatever. Nonsense. First of all, here's why I don't believe there's anything in Area 51, really. Now anyway. Do you know that if you are working on anything with the government and you need a part, you have to order it from a list that's already approved, right? You have GSA contracts. You can't just work for the government and go, okay, I need this or I need that. You have certain things that you can order. And then if you want to vary from that, you have to submit in writings, whatever this is, as an approved equal. It's a pain in the butt to order anything if you work for the government. But if a UFO, hypothetically, or UAP was actually in the Berkshires, whether it's GE, Pratt & Whitney, Commander, whatever it is, and that space where it is rented by a civilian, then if you need something, there's no red tape. You just walk into manufacturing and you go, come here, man, this is what I need. I need something that looks like this, that blah, blah, blah. And they go measure it and you have it later on that day.
That's interesting, man. And it's just very creepy. It's very creepy. So you think that we have these non-human entities working alongside maybe government. You say that these entities that were on this table that you were on had grayish skin, and that this happened briefly after, from what you can gather, after this encounter that you had with a UFO with your family in your car. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, we didn't really have an encounter in the car. We were affected by whatever this was. And I think that white cylinder ball, if you will, it looked like a cue ball, which is like 4 times the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. I think that's what did that. I remember our vehicle was affected by something there was a powerful field. a very powerful field around us. Where it came from, was it the vessel? Was it the sphere? I have no idea. But it came. It came from one of those three, which were, in my opinion, off-world. There's no question. And again, we weren't novice to seeing these objects. This was the third time we had already seen these objects, and that's something else people don't realize either. That the whole area was seen. In '66 there were sightings. In '67 there were sightings, and so in '69 this just assured everybody that their friends or themselves or family members weren't losing their minds. So that's why when we saw it, we too wanted to get a closer look. It wasn't like anyone was scared of it. So many people go, "Oh, I would have been terrified." Terrified of what? A ball of light? Really? It's not shooting anything at you. So, we didn't even realize that there was another object down this dirt road. We just, went where it was open. So when we saw this thing that we thought was still coming, we would see it, and I don't remember seeing it again. Neither does anyone in my family. But we weren't scared of anything. That's something else I don't understand. Why are so many people frightened of something a little bit different? I don't get that. Here I am today. I'm not hurt, right? I actually changed my career. I wouldn't have been the person I am today if I hadn't been part of that. It was a privilege, in some respects, to be part of something so extraordinary. I don't hate it. I'm not losing sleep. My son's abilities are off the charts, right? Sure, there was a long period of time where we were punching bags in school and we had to fight our way, to lunchroom, and there were some tough times for my mother, but that was a human element, not an off-world element. You know what I mean? So sometimes, in some
I see what you're
respects,
saying.
the on-world was tougher than the off-world.
So I'm going to get a little dark here. I hope you're ready for a new question. I know you're tough, dude, but I told you the vibe's a little different on this show. So, do you think that the government's interest, let me take a step back. If the government is interested in you, in that they're maybe working with humans or maybe even alongside extraterrestrials to abduct people, which isn't a conspiracy theory, that's new. You hear it multiple different times. If that is the case, do you believe the government may have targeted you because of your father and his death?
Well, my father's death came afterwards.
Okay. Well,
But
yeah. Do you think that might be associated with it in any way?
absolutely, there's no question. There's a good show on Travel Channel where we talk about that a lot. Okay, so this is gonna, wow. So my grandmother was the governess for Franklin Delano Roosevelt's grandchildren in Colorado, where I grew till I was 3 years old. Then we moved back to New England. That was when my mother got divorced from my birth father. And so we moved back to the Berkshires. She ended up getting like 80 acres, the horse farm, the diner, And the other thing too is that, again, there was a lot of a military presence. This is also during the time of Vietnam, right? The '60s. And I have O negative blood. A lot of my family members do. My brother actually has A negative. But again, he had a different father than me. And so that was a universal donor during the time of Vietnam, which was also tracked, the only blood type actually tracked by the US government, because we could give our blood to anybody. Anybody born in the '60s with O negative blood was tracked by the US government. That's easily verified. All right. So on top of everything else, I have the O negative blood grouping. My family was all Rh negative. You know, everybody 9 of us in our family are Rh negative, mostly A negative or O negative. However, that is unusual. I mean, the Rh negative factor only makes up like maybe 12 to 14% of the entire population. with O negative being the universal donor, tracked by our US government during the years of NOM, and yet we're surrounded by manufacturing facilities working on billions of dollars of projects funded by NASA. And here we are seeing stuff in the middle of nowhere, which is if you wanted to fly something or check something out or back engineer something, the Berkshires was a place to do it. And so was I targeted? I think that, there's a good chance we were, because, we've had 3 experiences, and other people have too from the area, but nobody ever really talked about it. Like, you take the guy with the long hair, Warner, back in the day, he was on Unsolved Mysteries. He didn't really even hear about it until he was volunteering at the Historical Society, and Unsolved Mysteries kind of called to see if they could get some information, but whatever. So there's a lot of people riding the train, I was part of that too. Well, no, you weren't, because you were never at our diner. Like Melanie Kirchdorfer, she's for real. So my mom actually remembered her coming into the diner because I'm jumping around here a little bit, because she used to order, grilled cheese sandwiches with sauteed onions with butter, salt, and pepper. So my mom remembered her as a child because she was the only one who wanted sauteed onions on her Swiss grilled cheese sandwiches. So she'd crush them down, and her boyfriend and her would come in, Neil Brandt, and, brown bag it and get some lunch, and they'd go to the waterfalls, right? So my mom remembers her. She's the real thing. Some of these other people that claim to be part of the Berkshire UFO incident, no, because it was our diner that is the Berkshire's UFO incident. It's those who, like Travis and those in his truck, are part of Fire in the Sky. So if someone goes, oh, I was also part of Fire in the Sky, which is Berkshire UFO, it's the name of a movie, just like Fire in the Sky is, or a TV show, to be part of that, who's in your truck. We know who was in our diner, right? You can't say later on, oh, I was with those guys in Travis's truck. No, you weren't. We would have known that, right? It's a small truck. It's like our diner, if you were part of the Reed family incident, or what's now AKA the Berkshire's UFO incident, then you would have been part of our diner, because it was our diner that made history, because it altered the natural progression of the community. You can't be part of something if you were never there. And so that's another reason I talk about this, because I try to clarify this nonsense. People, I was part of the Berkshires. There is no Berkshire. There is no such thing as the Berkshire's UFO incident. It's the Reed family incident. That was the name of a show. So see how our families gets kind of pushed off? I mean, we've got a park in Sheffield, Massachusetts, that's sponsored by the UFO Museum, the family of B.B. King, the family of Stevie Ray Vaughan, Ancient Aliens, Mike Barr, Travis Walton, Ben Hansen, right? That's our family. Park was built around our family and our diner, because our diner was a judgment-free place to be back in the day. You could speak freely. And so, so the city or town and my family and so on went on to extend that to the park. So like-minded people could sit in this park and speak openly and not be judged. So we extended that to the park. It's a judgment-free park. It's the UFO park in Sheffield, and it happens to be at ground zero. This is what I'm trying to do for people. I'm not billing people. It's free. I'm not here to make money. I'm trying to pay something forward, because I could die tomorrow, right? I could be hit by a car, victim of a drive-by shooting. I could choke on a chicken bone, whatever it is, right? I may not be here in a week. So I want to do something for others. I don't even live near the park, And for the press to say, oh, Thom built this monument and put it there. So no, I didn't. I live 1,000 miles away from the park. But that's how mean and cruel journalists can be.
Well, they have no idea. They all think that ufologists have some sort of bank account, right? I think Richard Dolan said to me, there's no award in ufology. There's no trophy to take home.
No.
And the work that you're doing is just so, it's so important. And I just think it's so important that people out there just know how much of this community isn't driven by money. And I think if people really took a second to look back at all the researchers and people that they know in the field, they'll see that there's not. not that much going on in terms of the dinero in the ufology field. It's a lot of people who really, 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 really want to make disclosure happen, and they're very excited about it. Thank you so much for going in depth about your experience and being in have you done hypnosis? I mean, sure, obviously tons of people have probably suggested it.
Nope.
Do you not want to? You're just like, no, thank you, because that's understandable too.
I don't need to. Yeah, I think it would just dilute everything, But this numbers thing I could do with you real quick if you want.
Oh, the
Right?
game.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to do
Okay,
a
but
game.
here's the
Yes.
thing. Just before we do it live, put it on stop it for a moment here because
Okay, we're gonna stop. All right, Mr. Reed, Thom Reed. What's next? What else? What's going down next?
Okay, so Jimmy Bell, a guitar player for Autograph and everything. I think I mentioned him earlier, Joan Jett and a little bit. We have him coming on our podcast in about a week or so. And what we want to do is we want to introduce high profile individuals who don't normally have an opportunity to speak freely. And being that with this IMDb credit we're able to give, I think that's going to help us get some of these guests. And at the same time, we want to bring those people to the general public who wouldn't normally get to hear from someone like that. So, we really are trying to go the extra mile to, bring this subject, the credible part of the subject, to the forefront. Because, like everyone else, we're all looking for disclosure. I don't particularly trust the government. So if the government says whatever, I'm not really going to jump on board with them either, because I already know. But at the same time, I think it's important that we kind of all know where this is going, and we're all part of it. Like people say to me, what do you think's happening, right? And I give them this analysis repeatedly. Our Earth rotates on a unique axis, so we have salt water, brackish water, fresh water, rainforest, desert, whatever, and because of the way it moves, we can house all this life simultaneously, right? And so if you look at the 5 global extinctions that we have had and look online to see how many species or animals we have thriving on this planet after 5 global extinctions, it's 9 million. And so if you look at that in itself, if you had a male, female zebra, right? They couldn't just have offspring and survive because they would have been inbred. They would have gotten sick and died off. So every species we have here living healthy, there would have had to been, maybe a dozen male, a dozen female, about the same age, relatively close to one another so that they'd meet in the first place, and an environment conducive to see that they live, that what they eat is there, the nourishment, whatever. So that means that we would have had 90 million species living here simultaneously after 5 global extinctions. Earth is our galaxy's arc. Off-world is not here to harm anyone. They're here to preserve life. And that's going to be in my book as well. So with that, yes, I believe Earth is our galaxy's arc. And thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, Thom Reed, I've been dying to have you on my show for 2.5 years. So thank you so much for taking the time. You're a fabulous guest. And thank you so much for spending, your life working on this incredible legacy to put out there. You just really are a treasure to this community. Everybody knows you as the fun guy that likes to hang out. You're always down for a good time, always down for a good laugh. And I've always really appreciated that about you. And hopefully in the future, I can't wait to hear all of the more work that you have, and hopefully maybe you'll decide to come on again sometime, if you'd like. But there's only one Nikki Starchild show, and it's only saved for, like we talked backstage. I'm not going to throw it out there to the viewers because I don't want to hurt their feelings. But it's a special show. It's a special show. So with that, thank you so much, Thom. I'm going to put you back into the gray room where I will join you in just a moment. And to all of my wonderful viewers, it has been an amazing evening with Thom Reed and Gentry. And thank you so much for being here with us on the Nikki Starchild show. It doesn't happen every week. It doesn't even sometimes happen every month. But when it does happen, it's a special treat. And I hope that you stay curious and you join us on the next episode of the Nikki Starchild show. We'll see you guys then.